Hey everyone, it's Fox from modelmakingguru.com here, and welcome back to part 9. I'm going to tentatively say, I think, part 9 of our build of the Master Grade 1/100 Sinanju Stein budget build. Right, as you saw in the last rather trippy episode, we assembled the mobile... Chief. We assembled the mobile suit, just to make the next stages easier, so rather than having lots of parts lying around. And as you can see, it's looking rather spanky. Now, oh hello. There, it's better. Now, the chipping. Yes, I know. The chipping came out kind of odd, kind of weird. What I should have done, and I make these mistakes so you don't have to. What I should have done is gloss varnished over the chipping and then done the Starship Filth coat, or alternatively done the chipping before I put on the first gloss coat, as it were. What's basically happened, as I mentioned before, is that the Starship Filth has coloured the paint chips I put on, and by extension of that also made them kind of look bigger because they've collected the paint and kind of stodged out a bit. So the chipping down on the feet looks alright. I'm quite happy with that. The problem is I got too carried away and carried on the chipping all the way up, and it's come out darker. Now, had it stayed the original colour, it probably would have looked quite cool, but because it's gone darker, yeah, it's kind of got weird. So, hey-ho, what are you going to do? Everything is a learning experience. I'm learning things even though I've been doing this for 30 years. So, what we're going to do next is we're going to just try something that probably won't make any difference whatsoever and might not even work. But what I'm going to try and do is try and blend that and tone that down a little bit using some oil paints. Now, as you know from our budget, we've only got Starship Filth at the moment as an oil paint. I'm going to be removing a product we haven't used yet, which is Tamiya's XF63 German Grey. That will take our total down to 54.59 here. And I'm going to add in some bog standard Artist's Oil Paint White. This is Winsor & Newton Soft Mixing White. And the cheapest I found that for on the interwebs was on the eBays, and that was £2.39, which takes our total to £56.98. So only about 70 or 80p extra when we take out the German Grey. So what we're going to do is we're going to start the dry brushing now. We're going to start with this white, just to see if it tones it down. If it doesn't, oh well, never mind. It's all a learning experience. If it does, then fantastic. And what we're going to probably do is, for some parts as well, we're going to mix in the white with a little bit of the Starship Filth, just to make an off-white colour for these darker parts. Now, I also did slap a matte varnish on this. You may notice it's not as shiny. However, I only had a little bit of matte varnish left in the can. I'm using Humbrol 49 rattle cans. The acrylic varnish, not the enamel. So it got kind of matte varnished, but then it kind of didn't get fully matte varnished, and I ran out, and I've got no more. I have a couple more cans on order. My local Hobbycraft, who I go and raid every now and then in locust mode, totally didn't have any. So it's like, so fudge. So anyway, yeah, we're going to go over the over it when we finish with the final matte coat. Then there'll be a couple of glossy bits we need to bring back with some gloss varnish brushed on, like the verniers on the back. These are still a little bit shiny, but they're not as shiny because they've got the matte varnish. But that's fine because the gloss varnish will bring those back. Same with the cameras in the head. So I put the matte varnish on there just to give us a slightly rougher surface for the dry brushing, because I want to try and not make it look like streaks. So let me go and disassemble this a little bit. No, disassemble. Sorry. Disassemble this a little bit, and then we'll start some dry brushing and see exactly what we can do. It may not work. It may look like ass even more. We'll find out. Back in a moment. Okay, right, let's make a start. What do we need? Well, first and foremost, we need some brushes. I'm using a selection of soft chisel edge brushes. I find these best for dry brushing just because they give nice control over edges. You're not getting blobby brush marks. You can go in at angles like that, and I find them better than round edge brushes. So I've got a selection of those. Our piece, obviously. And then we have our oil paint, which, as I said, was the Winsor & Newton Soft Mixing White. Now, you've watched me use the MIG oil paints before, and you know I can just take that straight from the tube. They're quite, not dry, but they're not especially oily. The Winsor & Newton stuff I'm using is an artist's oil paint, which are an often cheaper option compared to some of the model making oil paints. but they are more oily, oilier. There's more oil in them. They're made up slightly differently. So what I've done, and I'll have to shift the focus for this so you can see it. What I've done is placed the dod of oil paint on a piece of paper. This is actually my invoice from Japan Cool for the perfect grey Zaku. And what you'll see around the paint is this kind of discoloration. This is when I say to use a piece of card or porous paper as a palette for artist oils. This is why, because this is leaching out, not all of them, but it's leaching out some of the oils in the paint, so that when I come to put it on, hopefully it won't take quite as long to dry, and it will dry a bit matter and dry a bit faster. So if you're using standard artist oils, with MIG ones you don't need to because they're quite low oil anyway. Artist oils tend to be based on things like linseed oil and things like that, so they're more oilier. More oily. That's not even a real word. More oilier. Oily. They're wet. So this just leaches. I've had this for about, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes sitting here, and it's just very slowly leaching some of the oils out. Just makes it easier to work with. So let me get that piece back in, and we shall amend our white balance again. Right. So what are we going to do? Well, dead simple. You've seen me do dry brushing before. We're going to take our piece of paper. We're going to get a piece of tissue, which I've forgotten to get. Our piece of tissue. Now this might not come out on camera because it's white on white, and yeah. So we're going to get some paint. Same as every other time we've done dry brushing. Load our brush up with the paint. Take most of the paint off. On the tissue. Now you really want to get a lot of this off now, because you're not painting again, you're just dry brushing in exactly the same way we did on the beam rifle. We just want to catch edges and do a little bit of blending. So let's get this done. What I'm hoping is it will tone things down a bit, but it might not. So we're going to go around the edges, and it might just, it probably won't even show on camera. I can hardly see it in front of me, so what you can see on screen, Lord only knows. You will see a difference when it comes to the decals. They will start to fade and go pink, and it's a good way to make decals blend in. But because I've got so little paint on the brush, I can kind of work over the flat areas a bit, and it will just hopefully tone those paint chips down ever so slightly. And it'll catch some edges as well, because don't forget we've done this gunk wash of Starship Filth, so it may also pop out some of the white edges. Now it is going to unfortunately get rid of a lot of the dirt and grime that we put on with the Starship Filth, but you know, hey, what are you going to do? I goofed. Hands up in the air. I goofed. I should have varnished over these, but you know, we'll live with that. So it has faded them ever so slightly. It's made them a little more subtle. They're still there, but they're not as bad. Because I did the matte coat, or sort of tried to do most of a matte coat, it just gives a rougher surface for this paint to stick to, so it kind of works better if I'm trying to blend this as a sort of powdery coat. And there we have it. So it has faded them quite a bit. You can see in that comparison there. Let me move in so you can see. And then move here. And then do this. And then I'll just... So you can see here, it has faded them. Not massively, but it has made a difference. Because I used a dry brush technique, I've not been left with loads of brush marks. There's no paint sticking up on the surface. And it does make it look a little more subtle. So what I need to do now is spend about 25 million hours going around the whole rest of the mobile suit and just doing this. It does unfortunately fade the decals, as you can see here, but they're still there. And I've often used this technique just to make decals blend in a bit on models where perhaps I'm not doing too much weathering, but the decals still kind of stand out a little bit. I want them to fade like they've been in the sun. So yeah, I'm quite pleased with that. I'm amazed to be seeing what it looks like with the rest of the kit done, but it's certainly much lighter. There's the centre of the screen. Remember we said last time in the other episode where the centre of my screen is, and I've got no idea. It's kind of off to my left. Weird. So I'm quite happy with that. Let's go and get the rest of the vehicle done, and we shall see what happens on the other side. So, back in a moment. Okay, right, most of the white is now done. I just wanted to show you quickly doing some of the darker parts. Now you can see here on this foot, I've used my white oil paint to give some shade. Now it looks a lot harsher on video than it does in real life, I can assure you. Let's just see if I can change the white balance. It's not as harsh as it looks in real life, but I've used the same white paint on the grey and on the blues, just to give some fading and more wear and tear. Like I put more on the tip of the foot here, just to add some little scrapes and scratches and more fading. And what I've done as well, although I've faded out like I was before at the top of the leg, as I get towards the bottom of the leg, I've faded out less, because I quite like the dark chips at the bottom. Kind of works a bit. So, yeah, so that's where we're up to with that. So I'm going to show you how to do the blue pieces. Let's have a look. Right, so we want to do some fading on here. And this is going to be all kinds of weird exposure, so apologies if it comes out looking weird. But remember, it doesn't look quite as dramatic as it does in real life. I mean, it looks more dramatic on camera than it does in real life. So what I'm doing, taking my brush full of paint, taking most of it off on the tissue, but I'm actually taking really almost 99% of it off this time for the dark bits. For the white I could be a bit generous, but for the dark bits I'm going super slow and super careful. And all we're doing is we're kind of really more doing the edges here. The chipping is fine, you can't really see it, but I want to have some consistency. So what I'm going to do, literally almost no pressure at all, hardly touching the part, is just very gently rubbing it over edges. And this is where dry brushing is usually used, to highlight edges. And this is actually, I'm not doing any blending on the surface here because I don't need to, not really. I just want to catch the edges on here just to give it some definition, so it kind of blends with the rest of it, and it makes it look a bit more worn. And again, apologies this doesn't come out properly on camera. Just catching those areas. Now here, for example, in this corner here, I will just blend a little bit. I'll do a bit more. Actually, I'll take that off. What I'll do instead. See, I'm making this up as I go along. Doing the edges now, but when I've done that, I'll have less paint on the brush. So what I'll do then is go back a bit much. The good thing with oil paints, you can just rub it off. I'll go back and do a little bit of fading and shading. So I'll just catch these edges. And because I've used a kind of white or grey colour for the chipping colour, as I say, on this it's not such a big issue. It's not like on the white where I'm trying to tone the fading down, the chipping down. The chipping on here looks fine. But what I can do with the white paint is just suggest more chips, because it's kind of almost like the primer underneath the paint, if this was a real vehicle, is kind of a light colour. So this can just be used to accent it even more. So just very carefully going around, just gives it a bit of highlighting. And then on the grey as well, I don't really need to do the grey, but I'll do it anyway. I can go a bit heavier on the grey. Just catching those edges. Now on this dark grey part, I could do exactly the same, but I'm getting a bit more generous. And this just gives some depth and wear and tear to the grey part. Now, just so you know, by the way, as many people have pointed out, I never did a part 3 of the skill level 1 build with the Force Impulse Gundam. I never did a part 3 of that, or I did. I filmed some of it and it got corrupted, and then I kind of just forgot all about it. This is what the part 3 would have been, using white to make some highlights after you've done your gunk wash, just to tone everything down. So if you ever wonder what part 3 of the skill level 1 build was, it's this. If I go over these bits here, it just lightens them slightly and brings out the Starship filth in the panel lines. And this is all I'm doing. But now I've got most of the paint off the brush from dry brushing, I can go back and do some fading. And by fading I just mean picking at the corner and dragging it a little way across the body, or the panel. Just there. So I don't know if it'll come out on camera at all, but like I say, please be aware it looks a lot more subtle than it does under the harsh lights of the camera. It's not this obvious in real life. It's a lot subtler. So now I've got most of the paint off, and we can just go over these panels again. And just bring out some of these edges. And you can get smaller brushes of these chisel brushes. If you're not too comfortable using a big one, use a smaller one. I just find the big ones are best for doing it quickly and efficiently, and also making the nicest fades. Okay, so that's going to do it for this part. Just put a little more fading on this cockpit nose end. And that'll do us. So that's how I've done the dark areas. I've done the backpack and stuff as well. I've also used this technique on the dark grey parts that are exposed, like parts of the inner frame. Not like in legs and arms, but like parts of the hips, for example. Actually, what I haven't done is here. You can't really see. Oops, you can't really see this, and you never will. But I've done it like here. You can see on the edge here. Hopefully, you can see. Again, it probably won't come out on camera. Just to bring some highlights. It blends colours, and it makes the darkened recesses stand out even more. So that's it. I shall go and finish the last few bits and bobs. And then we'll get it put all back together again. It's all in bits at the moment. Or will I? Well, we've got some last bits of dry brushing to do with the Starship Filth for some rocket streaks. And then I'm not really sure what to do after that. I think we might be done then. That might change. It probably will. We've got some other little bits. We've got to put gloss varnish back on again. So let me go and get my Starship Filth ready. Let this dry for a little bit. This kind of dry brushing, you need to let it dry for at least 24 hours. However, even though it's an oil paint, because you've not put it on as a thick layer of paint, it's just real dry brushing, you can actually just hair dry it if you're careful, just to speed up the drying process. If you were painting something and you did that, it'd look like a dry riverbed. So you'd never normally use a hairdryer on oil paints, but with dry brushing you kind of can do. It's not a major problem. So let me go and finish this lot up, and when we come back we will do some Starship Filth streaking. Yeah, dry brushing. Starship Filth dry brushing. And we are back. Right, had the white paint drying for a while. Now time to go in with some more dry brushing. And what we're going to be doing this time is some Starship Filth for things like thruster vents and things. So again, dead simple. We've got ourselves two brushes, a sort of flat chisel edge brush and a slightly floppy roundish brush. I'll do an example here. I'll put some marks from this thruster here. How do we do this? Dead easy. More dry brushing. Take our Starship Filth, good old fashioned MiG 502 Abteilung Starship Filth. Get some paint on the brush, straight from the tube this one. It's not too oily, so we don't have to worry as we knock the camera. As before, get most of it off on the brush. You know how to dry brush by now. Get me a lot of it off for this particular sort of method. It couldn't be simpler. I'm going to use the edge of the brush, not the flat bit, the edge. Actually no, I'll do the flat bit first, just to put in some streaks. So we're going to take the brush here, and we're just going to go very lightly, no pressure. And I'm going to get more paint off the brush because there's still quite a bit. And I'm just going to drag it very slowly in the direction of exhaust. I'm going to use the edge on to try and get the middle bit. I'm just going to pad that out a bit. And then get ourselves a cotton bud. And I'm just going to give myself some nice straight edges by rubbing that slightly. If you can see this, I don't know, I hope you can. Come back in again, just to pad it out a bit. Push some more paint back in towards where the thruster is, because it seems to have a bit of a gap. Come over with the cotton bud. Just go over it again lightly, just to lighten it ever so slightly and blend it a little bit. couldn't be more simpler. Now you see here I'm fading it at the edges with the cotton bud because I want it to look like some kind of string. Now that it's at a funny angle, but then the engine points out at that angle anyway. But if you do get the angle slightly wrong, it's a little bit off, just go back in, put some more paint on. How's that looking? If I do it the right way up, it might help. I'm doing it at a funny angle from my point of view, so I can just come in and add some more. And then simply, all I'm doing is really smudging it with the cotton bud. I'll take a bit more off towards the edge. And I'm just very gently picking away at it. And there we have, I'll zoom in a bit, a thruster streak. Now you can see as well, because I've only left the white oil paint to dry for maybe about a couple of hours when I did the dry brush, as I'm rubbing this off, it's also rubbing off the white oil paint and the chips are getting darker, but that's fine because that just varies it a bit. It looks nice under the staining from the engine, and then you get the darker chips under there. So, and that's all we're doing. Now I don't know if these are thrusters or not, but I'll just do a little bit from in there just to give it some interestingness. I'm doing this really lightly now, just to put in some variation. I can always take it back a bit with the cotton bud if I need to. Again, I'm going in the direction of the streak with the cotton bud. I'm also not doing it on camera. I should zoom out again, shouldn't I? Really, so you can see a bit better. And that's kind of all we're looking for. I'm not sure that's a thruster, so I'm not going to put anything on this. But that's what I'm looking for, really. So I just need to do that with all the thrusters. All the thrusters on this kit. Now some of these I'm not even sure if they're thrusters or not. I can't even get my words out. This may be a thruster, so I'll do a little bit here. And I'll do it with the edge of the brush just to stain it ever so slightly. I'll do some on that side. And I'm keeping it nice and subtle. I'm not making big black streaks. I just want dirt and grime to suggest exhaust of some sort. These again, I'm not convinced they're thrusters, and if they were, they kind of point that way, so there wouldn't really be much to deposit around the edges, but I'll put a little bit there just in case, just to make it look interesting. I'm just feathering it around these thruster areas just to give a little bit of tone. Let's do another one. And the thing is, with this colour, with Starship Filth, you can actually keep the brush going for ages before you reload it. If you're looking for subtle effects like this, I'm just putting some smudging because there's so little on there now. And then I can always go back with the cotton bud, take it off the raised areas, and you're left with the smudging around the raised area, and the raised area is clean. So lots more of those. And this is all I'm doing here. Just going in, adding some patchiness and staining. Now if this wasn't a limited budget build, if I had unlimited funds here, which in reality of course I do, well I don't really, what I would do is, if you want to make really convincing like thruster marks and burn marks, what other technique you can use as well, unlike the one I've just done a moment ago, let's zoom back in again a bit. You can actually, if you want to get a kind of pointy thruster mark, you can start it with the edge of the brush first to make your thin line down the middle, and then just flick it around the edges to get it wider at this end. Again, it depends how you want to do it. Yes, if I wasn't limited on budget, what I would actually do is use two colours for this, and you'll have seen me do this on my Millennium Falcon, how to paint the engine vent things. What you can do, if you've got the MiG 502 engine grease, I think it's called, you can actually do this bit first, and it's a more oily brown colour, and then come back in very carefully with the Starship Filth in the middle of it, so you get the sort of brown colour on the outside and then the darker colour on the inside. But we've only got one colour here, so we can't do that. But that's one way of doing it. If you're not sure what I mean, go into my playlist for how-to videos and look up how to paint the vents on the engine of the Millennium Falcon. You'll see it on there. It's just to get that even more sort of burned look where the centre of the streak is your Starship Filth colour, and the outside halo of the streak is the kind of oily brown tone, the burning tone, which suggests heat. And we've also got, now we have got the engines on the back here, on the back of the jetpack. And I was debating whether to do some streak marks inside these, but I want to make these will be shiny. Once I've finished everything else, these will be gloss coated and then dry brush with some chrome silver. I wanted to keep these red bits kind of shiny as well because they look kind of neat. And if I start putting loads of streaks in there, they're going to look not so neat. So I may take some artistic license and actually not put any streaking on those, even though they're just big ass rocket motors basically. Or should I? No, I'll leave them. I'll see what they come out like when I gloss varnish them. I can always add some later. Other areas we have of note are, of course, these things on the legs, which I'll just take off because they're just not going to be doable otherwise. Okay, so we have these things, and exactly the same again. I'm going to brush it down here. Hopefully on camera. Get it into that little crevice. And then come back over this edge here and just take it off that bit. Same on this one. So we'll just get it on there. Get to the point where I need to reload my brush in a moment. Get it on that bit. Try and get into this little crevice. A little bit dark on that one, I think. And then just take it back off the edge. Now, I was debating whether to put it on this part of the foot, which you can't see because I'm zoomed in. Hang on. Or am I zoomed out? I'm zoomed out. Okay. I was debating whether to put on this part of the foot, but the problem is these thruster packs. Let me just move the camera out a bit. There you go, it's easier. Right. Should we try that again? These bits sit here like that. Oh, it's dark. Wow, hang on, let me fiddle with some lighting. Hang on. There we go. If I actually put the camera where the light is, it's a bit easier. So these parts sit here like this on the leg, but they can move around. So there's no guarantee they'd always be pointing down on the foot when they're in action. So I'm going to leave that. So I'm quite happy with those as they are. They will do nicely. So I can't. Oh, one last place. I'll use the thin brush for this. All kinds of Tony Fairclough camera movements today. Zoom. Right, one last place to do this is on the boobies. On the boobies, yeah? Yes, I know they're not boobies. They're just chest vents. So I'm taking my thin brush. Where's the camera? Taking my thin brush, hitting the camera with it, and then I'm dry brushing. Now, it's not as easy to dry brush with a thin brush because you can't scrubble the brush around on the tissue quite as easily, which is kind of annoying. But you get the idea. Also, don't use a favourite or good quality brush for this because it will get trashed. And so what we're going to do is quite simply put in some streaks here. And I'm going to be really gentle and subtle about this. Because it's kind of good that the brush has gone all splayed out at the end there, because I'll get some kind of streaks. And then just take it off the top bit because it's not looking as good. It's not actually working very well. I can't get... Well, it was worth a try. Didn't quite work as I planned. Let's take that off again. Not to worry. That's fine. it's worth trying something. If it doesn't work, that's the beauty of oil paint. If it doesn't work, you can just take it back off again. So we'll leave those. So, where does that leave us now? That leaves me putting the top back on oil paint before I squish it all over my elbow, which I will do. There's no other thrusters I need to do. What's left to do now, obviously we've got the weapons to finish off as well, that's still got to be done. What's left to do on here now is let all this dry, get some gloss varnish on the parts I need to be shiny, like bits of the inner frame. You can see all the thrusters on the back. But before that, I need to matte varnish everything, because this is kind of pretty much done now, apart from some picking out the shiny areas. This is pretty much done. So I need to wait for my matte varnish to arrive in the next couple of days. In the meantime, I won't show you the matte varnishing because I can't really film outside, and I have to do it outside. So in the meantime, I will demonstrate my matte varnishing technique with this handy video that I filmed for a different video, but it's just as applicable because this is how I do matte varnishing. So assume the next stage now is me putting a matte varnish on here. This is how we'll do it.
Here's what you'll need. Yourself, obviously, duh. Your model piece, na-na. A hand with a glove to stop stuff going on your hand, and any old hairspray, doesn't matter what it is, any will do. Yes, very nice. Now, to avoid blaps of stuff coming out of the can, press the trigger away from the model, pan it across and release. Press, pan across and release. You don't get splurts of stuff coming out then. Very good. Press, pan, release, press, pan, release, press, pan, release. Yeah, you should also check the direction of the wind when you're spraying. Do it from about arm's length, and that will avoid too much going on the model part. Otherwise, it'll just look nasty. Also, if you can do a super concentration face like this one, it kind of helps. Probably. And we're done.
And we are back. Righty. Everything has now been matte varnished. The whole mobile suit, all the armour for the weapons, everything, the bazooka. Managed to get a little bit of sunshine today, and also my matte varnish arrived. So, haha. Right, so we're going to battle through these last bits now, because in the last video I'm going to do the bits on the weapons, and then we'll do the final show off. So, what's left to do on the mobile suit? Well, as you can see, this has now been matte varnished. Lovely, lovely. No more, oh, apart from there. That bit was hidden because I did it on the mobile suit, but you're not going to see that. It's all been matte varnished. No more massive shiny shiny. Unfortunately, I'm also matte varnished the thrusters on the back. Yeah, so dead simple. All we're going to do is we are going to get our Pledge multi-surface wax, also known as Future or Clear, depending on your country of choice. And we are going to apply some to these parts to bring the shiny shiny back. So you can see my Pledge just off here, off the side. On my little placemat with blue tack to make sure it doesn't spill. How are we going to do this? Dead simple. We're just going to brush it on. As we showed, this is exactly the same as when we did the gloss varnishing the last time. Dead easy. Take yourself a soft brush, in this case not a massive one. Don't load it too much. And just brush it on. Dead simple. Now it may not come back quite as shiny as it was originally, but that's fine, because there's still one more step after this. So we're just going to brush on this gloss varnish. It's Pledge multi-surface wax, as it is. I'll go on the inside as well, because they're supposed to be shiny. And remember, this stuff has fantastic self-leveling properties. So if you go a little thick, don't panic. What I'll do is I'll just adjust my focus. There we go. Don't panic if you put on too much. It's fine. It will level itself quite nicely. So I'm just gently going around, putting it on. Couldn't be more simpler. Now obviously I'm going to need to do this on the verniers on the legs of the mobile suit, at the back of the legs. I'm going to need to do it on those thrusters. I mean, I could take this apart and this would be much easier, but you know what, I'm not going to. I need to do it on the thrusters on those big twirly round things on the sides of the legs, on the little silver vents on the sides, so I need to do those as well. And where else do I need to do it? On the eyes when you've done that, what I find, right, is when you spray matte varnish onto your gunpla, don't worry about masking off the eyes if you've used the foil stickers. 9 times out of 10, when you spray your matte varnish on, the eyes actually stay shiny. Now I don't know whether it's just because they're kind of naturally recessed and hidden away, so the matte varnish doesn't really get onto it, and if you're spraying downwards, the visor on the head, on the sort of the face mask, protects it, or whether it's just that the foil stickers for the eyes are so shiny that it just remains shiny anyway. Could be either. But if you do find that you spray your matte varnish and suddenly the stickers, if you've used the foil stickers, if they're suddenly not quite as shiny, just go over them with some gloss varnish really carefully with a fine brush, and you should find they go back to being nice and shiny. Now, obviously I'm using Pledge multi-surface wax, as you know, I know and love it. In other countries it's Future or Clear, or have a million different names. As always, I'll post a link in the description for this video to the website that tells you, it's one of these models, tells you what it's called in your country. But as long as it's a gloss varnish that you can brush, that's the important thing. A lot of gloss varnishes have to be airbrushed, and that's no use at all, because this is a budget build, we're not doing the airbrushings. So make sure it's a gloss varnish that can be brushed. So I'll just go around and finish these. And then when I've done these off camera, because we're running short on time, I'll go and do the verniers on the back of the legs, and we'll do those side thrusters and the eyes. I don't think I'll need to do the eyes. I think they're actually looking okay. So I'll need to leave this for an hour to dry, just enough for the next step, because there's still a little bit more we can do to put the shiny metal back in these. And that's simply with a little bit more dry brushing. This is the dry brushing episode, as you may have noticed. So let me go and do the rest of the bits on the mobile suit.